all for being here. It's a full house. We are so appreciative. And today my main job is to get out of the way so that we can cede the floor for all of the guests from outside agencies who have so graciously taken time out of their mornings to come and visit us and answer all of our questions. So it's great to see all of you. We'll start it off just for a couple minutes of did you know updates, cede the floor in case anybody has any questions or comments that they want to share with the group from their perspective, and then we'll move over to actually inviting our guests to each give a couple of minute update on what's new in 2018, anything they want to share with the group, what's on their mind, and then we'll open it up for more discussion, Q&A, any conversations that people want to have. So that being said, what is on people's minds? And because this is actually the month of Passover, and that is something that my family half celebrates, the question that always comes up is, how is this day different than any other day? And so I'll pose that to you, which is, how is this month, how is April different in your line of work than any other month? What's come up that's new or that is top of mind at this particular point in time? Anything? Staff? Developers? Nothing new? Rain stopped?
I was going to say, actually, it followed a nice March.
Yeah.
So we're happy with what March brought to the state.
That's working
Local
here.
entities. So.
Awesome. Anything else that people, new rules? We had some commission changeover that we talked about last time around. Anything new that we're seeing at the counter? Status quo? All right. Well, that was quick. So that being said, now we actually get to move on to our guest updates. So thank you. We have 5 different outside agencies who are represented here today, and I could put them on the spot and ask who wants to go first, or assign them who wants to go first, but instead I will ask. Anybody feeling particularly ready to hop up and share? Nose game? Thank you. All right, perfect. And remind me, did you have slides handy? Perfect. All right, I have everything ready for you then. So let's do.
So good morning. My name is Richard Broad. I'm the engineering support supervisor at Contra, Costa Water. Just want to run through a couple of quick updates on some legislative changes that have happened recently that impacts how we serve water to some of our customers. The first one I want to talk about is one that we've had a lot of questions on because it impacts how we provide water service to accessory dwelling units. Most of you probably already know that the state has enabled a number of, or enacted a number of bills recently focused on affordable housing, and in particular, the promotion and development of accessory dwelling units. How this has impacted the district is that it's placed restrictions on when and how we can charge connection fees or require a separate service for accessory dwelling units. Kind of what this looks like for us is, back in 2017, prior to this legislation, the district required a separate connection and meter for all accessory dwelling units that were detached from a main house, and for most accessory dwelling units that were attached. Sorry. With the new legislation, we kind of have to look at or do the assessment based on whether the accessory dwelling unit is built within the existing space of a permitted structure. So what it looks like is the top part of the slide. Which one's the point? All right, I'll do it like this. So
Hands are good.
The old-fashioned
hands, we'll go with it. Good. So up here, when we have an accessory dwelling unit for our district that's built entirely within the existing space of an existing permitted structure, we're not requiring a separate service line or a meter for that structure. This could be within an existing house or an existing garage. These other situations where we have an accessory dwelling unit that's attached to the main house, if it's built partially within a house or a garage, and part of it's outside of the garage, or where it's completely detached, these situations we're looking at requiring a separate meter and connection fee for those accessory dwelling units. Okay, and then the last piece of legislation that I want to just quickly touch on, I'm sure this will be a common theme today, is SB 7. SB 7 is a bill that became effective January 1st of this year, and it's basically a conservation measure, and it requires the sub-metering of all residential units in new multifamily or mixed-use residential developments. And the bill is pretty specific about the requirements for these sub-meters. The sub-meter must be approved by the California Department of Food and Agricultural Division of Measurements and Standards. It's the property owner or the developer that is responsible for the installation, the maintenance, and the reading of the sub-meters. The meters must also be registered and inspected by the staff within our district. It's Contra Costa County Weights and Measurements Department. And the city inspector or the cities are responsible to ensure compliance prior to issuing an occupancy permit, so that we have to make sure that those sub-meters are installed. And for us as the water district, one of our obligations is to confirm installation prior to issuing water service or as a condition of water service. So that's my quick updates on a couple of legislation changes. You got any questions?
Hi, thank you. Very informative. On this issue, I know some multifamily buildings in the past have set themselves up to be able to sub-meter for multifamily. Is there anything in the legislation that might require older projects to if they're going through a renovation or whatnot, to go back and sub-meter?
I don't believe so. I believe it only applies to new development that was submitted prior to or submitted January 1st.
Thank you. And then on the accessory dwelling units, could you maybe go back to the slide where they had the different scenarios? I wasn't quite clear on the last scenario, not within an existing structure. I mean, how do you distinguish between, within an existing space, a house or a garage, versus not with? I mean, is it just someone has a garage but they're building a separate accessory dwelling unit on the property? Or what if you build on top of it a garage? Is that considered within?
No. So the garage itself is the existing space. So if you've got a 600 or 700 square foot garage, if you convert that into an accessory dwelling unit within that 600 or 700 square feet, that's what we would consider existing space. If you were to build on top or to the side or add additional square footage, that's no longer considered existing space, at least for our district.
Okay, so that's that's an important nuance, because so I'm on the planning commission here, and when we looked at the accessory dwelling units, if there is an existing structure, my understanding is that even if that gets torn down and a new building gets built in its place, all of the provisions that apply through the state for the affordable, on the affordable side or the ADU side still apply. But you're saying there's a slightly different interpretation there. It has to be within an existing space.
That's
completely.
how we've interpreted the legislation, yeah.
Thanks.
Other questions? Yes.
Lots.
I'm sorry, if you,
Silly me for going first.
Oh. Is this about I was actually, and you may have already answered them, maybe I missed it, but how much is the residential secondary unit facility reserve charge?
So in our district, if you have a one bedroom, one bath unit, we offer it's a reduced fee. It's a 75% of our full facility reserve charge, which is right now it's about $15,800. If you build a larger accessory dwelling unit that's more than a one bedroom, it would be the full facility reserve charge.
Which is 20?
Just under 21,000.
Okay.
Other questions, Sandy?
So I'm not quite understanding the diagram that you have there below. So, or maybe above, you say an ADU within existing space of permitted structure, house or garage.
Mm-hmm.
So a structure, a normal single family house that has an attached garage and they can convert the garage and not be required to pay a separate meter?
Yes.
Okay. So down below, So where it says ADU partially within existing space of permitted structure, and then you have in parentheses garage. I don't
Okay.
quite know what that means.
So in this situation, so if they were to, if this was the garage, if the blue box was the existing space of the garage, and they were to add some additional square footage onto that as part of the accessory dwelling unit, that's no longer what we would consider existing space. It's new space. And so in that situation, it would require a separate meter and connection.
Okay, and so, but if somebody does an addition to their home, you don't require a separate meter.
It depends how the addition's done. And what I would suggest to anybody that's looking at doing this is to come to the district and submit your plans, and we can take a look at it and determine whether it would need a separate meter or not. There's some nuances in our code that are kind of difficult to explain without having a set of plans in front of you. That makes the determination of whether we would require a separate meter for an addition.
Was there any thought to, one of the things that we found is that people wouldn't come in to get permits for their second unit. You know, they would show it as an addition, but then later put it in a kitchen or whatever. But then state law made it much more streamlined in order to make those permitted. Do you see this as maybe a deterrent for somebody getting a permit because they would have to pay a separate meter charge?
Possibly.
I mean, the state law was intended to make these much more, to provide affordable units. And so, I'm just wondering if there was a thought to that from your board as to, this is going to be a deterrent for people getting permits. Anyway.
Yeah.
Just a question.
I'll defer the answer.
All right, great. Thank you so much. We'll
Welcome.
bring everybody back up for questions again at the end and discussion. And now I'm looking for my next volunteer. Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. If you want to introduce yourself while I pull up your slides.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Lee. I am the manager for our new business division at the East Bay Mud. And I'm glad I'm following Richard because I think he pretty much covered everything I wanted to say to this group here. So, just I hard to believe that we were here almost a year ago. So, let's see, just button here. So I just want to start with this map, kind of illustrating the service territory and where we serve in terms of City of Walnut Creek. We serve about half of the city, and the other half of the city is served by Contra Costa water. We spent a lot of time last year talking about some of the projects that we do for the development community and the associated lead time for each. And I want to just use that to kind of as a key takeaway here is that we're still experiencing a very strong market in development. And we are looking at a pretty long lead time for a number of type of projects. And so the key takeaway here is just plan ahead and come talk to us early if you do have a project that might require relocation of our facility, also may involve a main extension. So plan ahead. We do have a team that would work with you individually on each project to kind of walk you through each step of our process. So really what's new for 2018? Again, Richard did such a nice job on the ADUs, and I can just kind of follow on that and talk about what East Bay Mud does for ADUs. So imagine that you have an existing structure on your single-family lot. If you draw a box along all your existing structures, and if you adding to that, as long as you don't puncture that line that you draw in the existing structures, we do not review those for water use. Essentially, that's our interpretation of the law. However, if you at any point, if you puncture that envelope, the existing envelope, then that's what we review the project for additional demand on your ADUs. And how we do that is that we don't require a new meter for that addition. We will look at your total demand in combination with your existing structure, your existing main residence. And we add all the fixtures up. If those fixtures added, if you add up all the demand, and if there's a net increase, as long as the net increase fit within the existing meter, then you're fine. However, if you do go above that meter was allowed for, then we will assess we would require you to upsize the meter and pay the additional demand for that meter. So we look at those on a project-by-project basis. So again, if you have questions on those, contact us, submit an application, and we will work with you on those. And then there are a number of things that are changing at both East Bay Mud at the state level that prompted some additional changes to how we review and approve water services. And I will hand it over to Richard Harris, our water conservation manager, to talk about those.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Just real quick, and I see some faces in the room where we did go around for a little conversation about SB7, and thank you, Richard, for teeing that up. On East Bay Mud's water efficiency requirements, that's Section 31 of our water service regulations that are online. You can take a look at. East Bay Mud's been doing plan check review for new development as well as existing customers since the late 1980s. And we did that really as a way to help applicants coming through the process to understand if there was existing laws and also how we could improve water efficiency on the front end before they become a customer. So for about a decade now, in 2007, East Bay Mud created its own water service efficiency requirements that either had mirrored state law, federal code, or some things we wanted that we are authorized under the water code as a condition of water service. So we've had some experience since 2007 on the plan check review supporting the new business office with applications. And just up there, it's indoor, outdoor fixtures. But what that's, I think, done for us is position us well for what we see happening in the state over the years, over the last couple decades with the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance, other requirements for the long-term conservation as a California way of life. And what we've decided that we'd like to do is have an ongoing conversation with our peer partners, agencies, jurisdictions, as well as the development community. This is a community problem and a community solution. So there are other jurisdictions that have responsibilities, as Richard cited. But we have a role to play in developing some resources and a conversation. So we're all sharing information. We get it early in the process. It's not a gotcha at the end of the day when you come in for a water meter. Some of the new things we're developing with Andrew's team is an online water service application. It's got some new tools and some automated calculations. We're developing some welcome packet information with design charrettes, examples of hydrozoning that meets model landscape ordinance, just things to help any size of an architecture or a designer on a spec for a project. And we hope that'll grow over time as we converse and learn from the community about where the questions are coming from and where the sticking points are in information exchange. The state really is trying to figure out what to do with the model ordinance, I think, as far as, yes, it's in the building standards code now, but there's a lot of education that's still needed, not only on the manufacturer side of the products that have to deliver, but also for how a design of a landscape and its maintained has to meet the requirements going forward. We are going to see some more things coming out of the state on regulation supporting conservation as a California way of life under the governor's executive order. I won't go back into SB 7. Thank you, Richard, but that is something that's new. We've had some experience back in 2009. The district required individual metering or sub-metering as part of a water service for 3 stories or less, which is about 2/3 of our development going on in historical snapshot. I think this is a learning curve for Weights and Measures. It's a learning curve for the type of meters that are on the market, smart meters, how it's maintained and read, and the tenant-landlord issues. So we're going to learn together as this gets implemented. And I just put down there SB 407 just as a reminder that things may be passed in years past on Cal Green or other codes, but they come due. And one of the ones coming due is that all existing multifamily and commercial plumbing fixtures have to be upgraded by January 2019. So even though it's new development will have its requirements, even existing properties, if you're going to be in there doing some remodeling, you even have to do this even if it's not being remodeled. But it's just a heads up that there's things that need to be addressed. Thank you. One more. And, you know, the draft water use prohibitions that the state circulated back in November had another public draft in February. We're waiting for the next third round of public comment for different water uses that were enacted during the drought emergency, and now they're going to be, approach from the governor's order is to make them permanent parts of water use in the state of California. So some of you may be tracking this, heads up. We are tracking it. It's fairly common practice. It's not saying you cannot use water, but just don't use water excessively, fix leaks, don't irrigate when it's raining, etc. What this will lead to is there's other draft legislation about the long-term framework that will affect, you know, indoor per capita use, it'll affect outdoor use, and it'll affect commercial, industrial, institutional use at some time going forward. So stay tuned, and we'll be back with updates on how we support state legislation on that. And
All right.
questions?
Thank you.
Next.
Questions? You're going to give me my exercise. If you guys just keep asking questions at all corners of the room, this is perfect.
Thank you. I had a question on the regulation for the multifamily where existing properties are going to be asked to retrofit their fixtures. It seems for multifamily development, water is becoming more and more part of the, if we go back to that slide, SB 407, yeah. I had a project in Santa Cruz, and it was in the Soquel Water Creek district, and wasn't able to move that project forward because of lack of a willingness from the water district to provide will serve letters. They have saltwater intrusion into their basin, and as a result have created a very interesting water demand offset program, whereby as a new developer, multifamily developer, you have to go out and literally ask your neighbors to, you know, buy them toilets or redo their fixtures to create enough offset to actually even get will serve. So water has become a growth management concern, especially along the coast. And at the same time, we're in a huge housing crisis. I guess from a policy standpoint, my question is from things like SB 407, where it's requiring, you know, these things. Is there also an incentive side of this equation where these offsets are being calculated and it's resulting in an ability for developers to get more will serve or permits, similar to the cap and trade program, for example, where you buy extra carbon, pollution rights, and then, but some of that money is actually going back into building housing.
So I think I have a partial answer, and obviously each jurisdiction is a little differently, and about what their supply limits are, or diversity. For East Bay Mud, all of things that happen, both what we call passive or active conservation, so if it's passive through codes and standards, or if it's active through incentive programs or programs we're funding, it's all part of our Water Conservation Master Plan, which is part of our long-term water supply portfolio. So anything we gain obviously allows us to not only serve the growth that we expect to happen within our service area, but get through water shortages. So that's pretty consistent among the general water utility community across the state. But there are, you know, locales that have other challenges and are looking for that trade-off or net zero development or something. We have that when we annex property outside of our service area. Historically, we've had terms and conditions that has to have demonstration of bringing either savings or water to the table as a condition of annexation, which might be similar to your example. But I think what's the state's approach is we need to at least be efficient because we've got these challenges, right? One of the things I see as a challenge is we try to work with the real estate community and other partners and hear how's it going, and a seller has to notice the buyer if they have not complied under the law. But there really isn't the education or the bank, the budget to enforce or educate as these things get passed as laws. So one of the things we're doing is we're piloting an on-bill financing program because we think there will be some multifamily or commercial that may not have the ready capital right at hand when this becomes required. And we're looking at on-bill financing where we would step away from a utility rebate because everyone's 100% free rider, so that's not good ratepayer investment. But we can maybe say, hey, we're in it with you. We're going to pay up front for your retrofit, and you can pay it back on your water bill. And so there's a lot going on with the PACE program and the pay as you save, and that's something that we think will be a market solution, and we'll get private capital as well to come in.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
I just want to clarify for SB 7 and the January 1st, 2018 deadline. What application is it that has to be submitted to that? Is it a building permit? Is it an application for water service? What type of application?
So what the law does is that it puts that trigger at the water service application. So the challenge that we've been dealing with is that East Bay Mud, we have a policy essentially that we would not accept applications unless you have some form of permit basically acknowledging the project is going to move forward. So as part of the application that a developer submit to East Bay Mud for water service, we would require some form of permit through a city or county saying that this is a project that's going to move forward either through a building permit, some type of site improvement permit that would suggest that we have a project that we can review for water service. Does that answer your question?
It does. A follow-up, does that application have to be deemed complete prior to January 1st or just submitted?
Yes. Yes. I think right now we're kind of 4 months after that fact, so we pretty much everything that we receive falls into the SB7 requirements. So.
Great, thank you. And again, we'll open it up afterwards, but thank you very much. Who would like to go next? Perfect. Thank you. Central San, I'll let you introduce. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Dana Gemmel. I am the Planning and Development Services Division Manager at Central San. I do not have slides today, but I just wanted to kind of make some general notes. Of course, at the top of my list is ADUs. So I thought I would sort of share the sewer perspective of what we're looking for. You've just heard both of our water partners. So in terms of ADUs on sewer side, one of the things that we have is we're looking, and I'm going to kind of reference Richard's diagrams. They were very good. Thank you very much. In the same way that if we have existing space, Central San does not impose any additional connection fees. We do state that in our code that existing space is essentially a structure that has been has a closed building permit within 3 years or after 3 years. So there is that. So that way one building isn't, this year and then the next year it's now an existing space. But what we do, which is slightly different, is that for our new construction, if it is, outside of the space, what we look at is it's a proportionality, and our current connection fee is $6,300. And so we take a look at the 1,200 square foot threshold that was in the legislation last year, and basically if you have 600 square feet, then you're going to pay 50%, so 600 over 1,200 of that 6,300. So by and large, most of our ADUs are running in the $3,000 or less. So so with that, I just kind of wanted to mention that there is a little distinction there. And so, but we also don't necessarily look at the footprint, as attached. So if it's attached, it generally falls into that that exempt state. So we're really looking at those garages that are separate structures. Now, after ADUs, I just kind of wanted to offer a few reminders, really, just to make our process easier for all of you developers. First one, and we hit this all the time, and that is the importance of potholing. Walnut Creek is a very old city. We have a lot of 6-inch clay pipes that are in the streets, and so we're always trying to make sure that we're trying to look at those and also avoid all of our water partners' lines. And so occasionally we get engineers that come in with ground penetrating radar. To us, we actually want the physical potholing. So I just wanted to mention so that you don't have any confusion and delays as a result, because we want to make sure there are no conflicts. And sewer pipes, we like gravity, and so, you know, we have to really look to see what's in the way so we can find an alternative solution. So, so potholing, please, before we really get too far in the process, will help you a lot. And then I also wanted to kind of comment on 2 programs that we have that you may not know about, and they relate to large capacity fees, and that is on a large development, especially in restaurants and commercial side of things. We offer financing programs, and so we want to make sure that if you meet certain criteria, especially if you're a restaurant with, you know, a very large capacity fee, that that you can come in and apply for it. We have terms over 15 years, and we try to take a look at the water use. We are in the middle of streamlining that program to our board. I see one of our board members here today, and that is looking over the next couple of months that we're going to try to make it easier and allow more customers to participate in the program. So if you don't know about it, now you do. And then finally, one of the things I also wanted to mention is something that we call special studies. And so if you are a typical development, like if you're a restaurant, you are a health club, you are, you know, anything that, you know, is very defined, you have our standard categories for connection fees, and that's pretty straightforward. Lately, that is not what we get. We get a lot of platypus development. And so here in Walnut Creek, we're looking, I know, with the new sports mall. What's a sports mall? It doesn't fit a standard category. It has, you know, turf inside. It has, you know, little, you know, kiosks and different things. So we have a special study program, and it doesn't just apply to this, but if you're a platypus development, I have one bank, coffee shop, and I mean a lot of these type. What we will do is we will try to make assumptions based on our best guess of what kind of flows we're going to see, what is your strength of, you know, the sewer that's going to come to us, and we will enter into an agreement with you, and over 5 years we will check it every year, so that way we can be using your fees based on actual facts. Surprise, we want to actually like facts. So if you feel like you're sort of in between categories, ask us about special studies and we can work with you. And we've done a lot of these. It is in our existing code, so you're not necessarily having to push a boulder uphill. And so we want to try to accommodate you so that you are only paying for the strength and the flows that we're actually treating. So that is sort of the end of my updates. Any questions? That was easy. Thank
The
you
platypus?
very much.
I mean, great. Thank you guys very much.
Here you go.
All right. We want electricity or fire? All right. All right, perfect.
Good morning. My name is Captain Martinez, Lisa Martinez. I work for Fire. I've been there for quite a while. The fire marshal couldn't be here today, so I'm stepping in his place. The biggest thing I think that we've had a change in is where we're located. We still get people going to our old office on Geary Road. And so, you know, when people come to see you guys at your different locations and you want to send them to us, we are now located at 4005 Port Chicago Highway, Suite 250. The processes haven't changed when it comes to plan submittals. We're going to, of course, ask everybody to go see the planning for their respective city. After they see planning, we want those plans to come to us. We always want fire first, and then we want it to go to building. The other thing that may change later on this year is the fee structure. It's under review right now, and it looks like we'll be presenting the fees to the Board of Supervisors, so there may be a change, and that won't occur to after the fiscal year sometime. So that's anywhere between July and the end of the year. I think that's about it from my perspective that I have that's really new. Nothing's really new. It's pretty much all the same. Does anybody else have questions for us?
I imagine those fees are not going down.
Right.
Just,
That-
oh yeah?
Some are going up and some are going down because it's really based on the time to do the plan review, how complex the project is, and things like that. So some will increase, but some are actually going to significantly decrease.
This is sort of an out-of-the-box question, but so there's different construction types that relate to different fire standards, and I'm wondering how are you guys seeing more innovation in the construction types, or like how are you treating like modular construction, multifamily modular construction in terms of fire codes? Is it going to be different, or do you look at it as a type 4 or type 5? I mean, kind of get the
I don't think it's going to have any typical change. I mean, we get like modular buildings that'll come in and they're already pre-sprinklered when they come.
I see. Okay, thank you.
We'll still go out and we'll do the hydro and make sure that it functions, but it's no real change that I'm aware of at this time.
Thanks.
Here you go, Peter.
Thank you for coming. One of the reasons that we're interested in having all you folks in the room together is that, when we're working with the city and we're working on various plan check processes, there's a lot of interrelationship between our plan check comments and working with these outside agencies. And obviously, I know that the take-home is start early, but one of the things that I've noticed is in a lot of our site planning, we're trying to be as dense as possible, which often leads to relatively narrow access alleyways. I'm a residential developer. And therefore, we often have problems with aerial apparatus. And so it's fairly common early in the planning process for us to try to negotiate some kind of a variance that might allow additional sprinkler coverage or some other variety of items that would be acceptable to the fire department, because often city planning and our financials require that kind of density. So can you speak a little bit to the variance process and how that might work for us in terms of, as you said, we come talk to planning first and then come see you, but often when we're proposing something, we're not actually, we're not in construction drawings with the building department at that moment. We're still more on the conceptual end. So we try to talk about what that variance might look like, and then we go back and perhaps come back again later.
Okay, so the best way that you could handle that particular situation is if that you already know that there is going to be an issue with access for our apparatus. Is number one, come early. And a lot of times, if you have a site plan already of what it's going to basically look like, we can look at it. You guys could come down, schedule a consultation meeting, and this is where that process is the best to be discussed. The plan reviewer, usually it's one of our senior plan reviewer, if not with the fire marshal sometimes, depending if that senior plan reviewer cannot get it done, will come in and we'll talk about it. Then after that, when you're doing your submittal, you have to submit an alternative means and methods prior to that plan review. So the alternative means and methods would have to be approved first, so that when that plan reviewer receives the plans, they already know that this has been approved by the fire marshal. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, it makes the process easier. If you already know that there's an issue, it's a lot better to, be on the front end of it than to have those plans get submitted, and then we're like, they'll sit in our queue. They have a process between 4 to 6 weeks to even being looked at and finalized. If we know on the front end, we can work with the project a lot easier and make that process smoother and shorten any potential hangups to get those plans reviewed and processed.
Yeah, I think my big concern is that we go through 4 to 6 weeks of plan check. Nobody really looked at this closely enough to understand those implications. We get your comments back. Now we're already several months into this process. We go back to planning, and now we're saying, hey, we have to
And we do offer the consultation. So when those big plans come in, or there's a big project that's going to come in, we've done it for years. You can call us, try and get a consultation meeting with a basic plan, And any of those issues that come out, you have the consultation, you come to the office, we look at what you have, what's proposed, and if we see that there is a potential hang-up, we can address it at that time so that when you get your final plans into us for the submittal, there shouldn't be that hang-up because it's already been discussed. And you already have a contact with the plan reviewer who's probably going to receive those plans to look at.
Thank you.
Anything else? Hi.
The question was, do you have a standard time review time frame for those who will watch from home?
Okay. Basically, you'll come in, and we try to get our plans reviewed between 4 to 6 weeks. That's the process from the time they come in. We do have shorter time frames. We do have an over-the-counter process. So if you're doing a small tenant improvement, there's parameters for those plan reviews. You can come in Monday through Thursday between the hours of 8 to 12. But I always tell everybody, you want to come in and get into the office by 11:30 so that you can be sure that your plans will be looked at. And that can be the same day. So if it's small, your project's very small, it meets certain parameters. And we brought handouts for everybody in here. What are our over-the-counter plan review parameters? And we also brought in our new location.
Great. Thank you so much.
Great.
All right, and last but not least, Vic from PG&E.
Thank you, everyone. I don't want to keep you for the rest of your day. My name is Vic Baker. I'm with PG&E. A couple of items I would just want to talk to you about briefly. One, I want to give you an update based on last year's presentation that we gave. We were in the midst of revamping all of our service planning organization last year, and I couldn't tell you exactly where we were with it because we're in the midst of reorganizing. Well, since then, we've worked with our union employees. We've worked internally to make that revamp. We've actually done that. We've made the changes. We've moved personnel around. And so in the future, from this point moving forward, you guys should, or any of our clients or any of our customers should see a level of service increase coming from PG&E with regards to residential, commercial, new development. So that's one of the positives that I absolutely wanted to come out with and start the day with, because we're really proud of what we're going to be doing in the near future. Expedited process. We have an entire department dedicated to our development group. So they go into a different category when applications come in, and it's an organization specifically designed to work with our developers. We also have our existing, residential reconstructions and things of that sort that they go into a different program. However, this is what I will say. We have a lot of business in the East, a lot of work happening in the East. Not only our compliance work, we have to do compliance work on behalf, what we have to do CPC, and that's vegetation work, and our electric compliance and our gas compliance. But in addition, we have new business. They're building a lot out in Brentwood. They're building a lot out in Antioch. They're building, and it's a lot. I mean, you look around Walnut Creek, it's a lot here, right? That puts our construction schedule back a little bit. So while we can get you through engineering faster than we've ever gotten you through engineering before, we have a construction, we only have so many people working for our company that can do construction, right? So our construction backlog is about 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, construction only, which means that we are requiring our customers to have their portion of the job completed 4 weeks before we even get out there. So you can imagine what we've been running into is we'll have somebody in construction schedule, we'll be ready to go, 60 hours worth of work, 80 hours, 120 hours worth of work, ready to go. We get out there, our crews show up on site, and our customer's not ready. If our customer's not ready, we've lost that opportunity, and now we have to tell the customer, you have to go to the back of the line. Because we can't fit them in next week, it's booked. It's a lot of hours, right? So that's a hard message. So what we've been working with the BIA and been working, well, I think there was a presentation to BIA a couple of weeks ago regarding this specifically, but it's important that we get these jobs completed. It's important that we work closely with our service planning and our new business reps to really understand what that construction schedule is and to really do each of our parts. I'm committing to you that we're gonna do our part, but we absolutely need your help in doing your part, customers, and so we can get out there and get this done. We want to work with you, okay? So new level of service, that's number one. The second one, ooh, boy. Bear with me on this one, okay? Bear with me. Wait for it, right? Bear with me. Final decision from the CPUC came back from a 2007 rulemaking. The final decision came back in December 14, 2017. Regarding changes in our vegetation management, 2 big changes in our vegetation management, and our annual vegetation management. The first one is we are going to extend on our distribution. That means everything that you see within the urban areas above ground, our distribution lines, we're going to increase our clearance areas from 18 inches to 4 feet. Okay? That's a big one. Okay? So what that means is if we come annually, the minimum distance has to be 4 feet. So that means we have to cut back, depending on the species of trees, more than 4 feet. So by the time we come back the next year, it's not encroached within that 4 feet. Let me stop there for a second. Any questions about that? Because that's number one. Okay. So that is to be implemented. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. Yes.
So when you say more than 4 feet, what do you mean?
It depends on the species of the
so
tree.
They're actually going to determine species and then...
We're going to do the assessment of every single mile of our lines.
Wow.
To determine what trees are close by,
Mm-hmm.
what that trim is. It's no different than what we do today. We do that today, even with the 18 inches.
Mm-hmm. And you do more than 18 inches?
Yes.
Okay.
So that when we come back,
Uh-huh.
it's not encroached 18 inches. So that's what we do today. So that's a minimum standard that existed up until January 1 of this year when they implemented it. So that is going to be rolling out. We're doing assessments as we speak today. We're absolutely going to inform and work with our cities as we go out. Every customer is going to be informed because some of these will live on private property. So we're going to work with our customers to ensure that we can get in there and do that type of work, okay? So that's number one. We have to get this, so that's what we call, a part of that is 3 tiers. We have a high fire threat districts divided up into 3 tiers. Tier 3 being the most extreme. And you can, the 24 corridor into Walnut Creek, all the way to the tunnel, of course, is probably the most extreme. Right, that's Orinda, that's all La Miranda area along the 24 corridor. That needs to be done by September. Yes, it needs to be done by September. So it's a big one. We're going to get out there. We're going to get that work done. So just be aware of that. Okay. Yes, sir.
Does this requirement apply to just a distribution, or does it also apply to like the power drop to an individual building?
Well, that is distribution.
So the line from the power pole out on the street to the building, you're going to be trimming. Let's say that goes across somebody's front yard. You're going to be trimming their trees to the point where it's never closer than 4 feet from that just the 220 power drop.
That's a great question. I see what you mean. So the service to the house, are we going to be trimming that? I'm not sure. I don't necessarily have an answer to that because that's, of course, lower voltage. The second piece, the second bullet of this is we're looking at the 24 kV to the 72 kV distribution lines. All right, that's the second bullet. So what regards to the drop, I don't have an answer. That is a great question. I don't know. My mind was just focused on our distribution lines. Okay. But I can get back to you on that. But with that said, the 2400 to 7200 kV lines, we're going to, which are little bit more voltage than your regular distribution lines. We're going to be cutting that back 12 feet radial around those lines. It's going to be a 12-foot cutback radial around those lines. The hard part is you cut any tree 12 feet, the tree may not survive that, right? So we're going to experience a few removals. It's going to exist, a few removals. So I wanted to prepare you and deliver this. This is the first time that I had the opportunity to talk to a public place about this. So please be easy on me, okay? As I practice a little bit, and as we hit this corridor, hopefully I get a little bit better at delivering this hard message.
I do have, I see a bunch of hands popping up. I do have an eye on the clock. I'm actually just going to, Vic, let you finish with what you're going to say, and then I'll open it up for questions.
I know when to stop. So how about I stop now and answer any questions that you may have.
All right.
Thank you. The 12-foot around the higher power lines, that's kind of scary. There's a number of development projects that I'm curious, like how, if there's an existing condition like that where you have a building within 12 feet, what happens then?
No, this is strictly vegetation.
Just vegetation.
Just vegetation.
Okay, so you could put units next to it, but you just can't put.
Well,
trees.
you have your OSHA requirements, and of course your your CPC requirements, that you need to abide by. Okay. I would suggest that if you do have a building very close to lines, it may fit within the parameters, but I would need you to consider that if in fact you need to do any maintenance on that building and put scaffolding, it may encroach on that minimum distance, and you might not be able to do that work. So be very careful on how close you get to those lines, because yeah, you got more space and more building, but in 15 years when you want to paint the outside, good luck. Got it. I don't know how you get by that with OSHA. Okay.
All right, well, what I'd love to do now is just give a huge round of applause. This was a really big deal that all of these folks came in to speak with us this morning. So thank you so much for doing so. And we're coming up to the top of the hour, so what we'd actually like to do is allow everybody now to mingle and ask your questions individually. Thank you so much again. We'll make this recording available, and we will certainly continue to invite everyone back and share out contact information from here. We're really grateful you came. Thank you all.